Football, Ohio State Buckeyes live each and every week. This is our 10th edition. With me or without me, you got Tony Girdman from the Ozone. You got Steve Hellwagon, who capably hosted 2 consecutive shows from 247 Sports Bucknuts, and maybe Claire Crawford, maybe Kevin Noon will join us as well. But we think we've got just enough talent and ability, information, and knowledge by these two, not myself, to carry on a pretty decent show.
Certainly not too much talent.
Yeah, we don't want to weigh it down too much, too heavily, overwhelm anyone with maybe we're like number 32 in the recruiting rankings right now.
We develop our talent.
How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing wonderful.
All right. Fall camp opens in just a few days. We are just maybe about 36 hours away from the boys hitting the field August 2nd. That's a Friday. Steve, what are your storylines? What are you going to be looking out for?
Oh, it'll be a lot of fun to get out there on Friday morning and see the 2019 team as it's going to be constructed, to have all the players on one field. All the true freshmen will be there taking their first snaps and first plays as Ohio State football players. And, it really is such a fun time. And you have a new coach, obviously, full-time head coach with Ryan Day. You have a new quarterback with Chris Fields. I keep saying Chris Fields. It's Justin Fields. They had a player by the name of Chris Fields about 5 or 6 years ago, wide receiver. I'm going to struggle with that all the time because I have dyslexia or something. But at any rate, it is just an exciting time because there are so many unknowns out there. How will they use Justin Fields? What will this offense look like? Will it approach the same numbers as last year? Is the defense any better than it was last year when they gave up record number of points and yards in the modern era for Ohio State? So to me, it's just in every direction. And plus you have 5 new assistant coaches as well, though we saw them in the spring. So there's so much to see out there on Friday, and we're going to do our best to bring it home to people on Friday.
Didn't Chris Fields catch the pass against Purdue just inside the pylon that then needed the 2-point conversion against Purdue? Tony shaking his head. Yes.
Yep. That sounds right.
10 feet in front of me. Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
That was quite a day. I mean, that preserved the undefeated season. Yeah, that was really something, as I recall.
Tony, what's on your mind?
I'm like Steve. I'm looking forward to seeing where people are lining up, where Jordan Fuller is. We didn't get to see him in the spring. Let's see how healthy Tough Borland is at middle linebacker. Is he with the ones? I don't know how much we will get to see of any type of scrimmaging on Friday. We'll get to see the first 30 minutes. And really what that entails is stretching, jogging, some position work. And you kind of have to decipher who is at the top of the depth chart by who is drilling first. And that's not the best way to do it. So I'm interested to see where guys are, where they're lining up. We just did a 2-hour podcast last night previewing camp, and we couldn't even talk about the linebackers anymore because we've talked about them since January, and I'm ready to watch them. Give me some new information on them. Let me see what's going on with them, because we can't possibly talk about them anymore. All we know is they should be better, because they couldn't be any worse than, the defense as a whole couldn't be any worse. And so we'll finally start to get to see that realized. Spring defensively, things were simple. We didn't even see the bullet really in a spring game, no reason to. So now we'll get to see more of the implementation of the real defense, which I'm looking forward to.
I will talk college football with just about anybody at any time that has half a brain and knows anything about the game.
Thank you.
But yeah, Tony, it's gotten to a point where, man, when they actually get on the field against somebody else, it'll be nice to be able to talk about the games. But for now, it's going to suffice to actually talk about guys actually running around, catching passes, hitting blocking sleds. That's better than nothing because, we've just exhausted all the storylines from the off season, which include, yes, are the linebackers going to play in the mold of the great tradition of Ohio State linebackers or something close to it, rather than what we've seen over the last few years, which I don't want to make the narrative be that it's just been atrocious top to bottom every game start to finish, but it's certainly not met the standards that they need to win Big Ten championships, although they've been able to pull it off without that play. But normally the type of play that they need to be consistent in every week, and it's just certainly been substandard.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, that's going to be one of the things that people are really watching, I guess, when they get into full pads and tackling is, do 2-yard plays become 15 and 20-yard plays as they so often did last season? Do 10-yard plays become 80-yard plays as they so often became last season? I think that's linebackers. It's scheme. It's any number of things people will be watching for.
I think they gave up 2 90-yard carries last year, and I was looking back at 2017. I think they had maybe five games where they gave up less than 100 yards rushing, and this is almost the same defense, same personnel, and just a completely different result. And it's you would assume last year was the outlier, and that's why we keep saying they couldn't possibly be worse. They have to be better, but we're almost to the point where we're going to get to see this actually happening and see if it's true. And man, I'm looking forward to it because it's been a lot of, well, they should do this. They should be better. They have the talent. Ryan Day said that in Chicago. I like our talent. I look around and I see, I don't know how other teams could have more talent than us. So we better be pretty good on defense.
No doubt.
Exactly. I want to let everyone know that because this is the off season and because we've shot now 10 shows that and nobody's played football during these 10 shows, is that you can go back to the other 9 shows and most of the information is still relevant. These guys have done a really nice job while I've been stuck at work the last 2 weeks, and I've been listening to the shows, most of them breaking down the Buckeyes on both sides of the ball and some of the interesting storylines heading into Big Ten Media Days, and then that spilled out onto the field in regards to their thoughts about a number of these situations that we see on both sides of the ball. And I think the greatest intrigue is exactly where you guys are going right now with the linebackers and where you see the secondary playing out as well. Anyone on that side of the ball that could be somebody that really comes out of nowhere to be a player that's impressive on that side, Tony?
The first guy defensively in the secondary, I'm looking at Shaun Wade. I think this is going to be where he becomes a household name in the Big Ten, at least. He signed in 2017 as the number 2 corner in the entire class, was hurt as a true freshman, redshirted. Last year as the redshirt freshman, was after about game 1, game 2, he became the number 1 nickel back, played some safety, and this spring he was the number 1 strong safety, which is the slot guy, and really he's also the nickel guy again, and he's a playmaker. He finds the football. He's not a complete player yet. I mean, he was the guy that gave up the 93-yarder to KJ Hamler last year against Penn State, but he's long, he's athletic, he's fast. And he's, with this new defense that they have, I think he's going to be one of the big names that comes from it. And Steve probably has another name that we're both thinking of as well.
Yeah, I like Shaun Wade a lot. I think another name that you got to keep in mind is Tyreek Smith, the defensive end. He had a great spring by everybody's account, and Larry Johnson has brought him along. His freshman year, he didn't get to play, but he is going to have an opportunity, I think, maybe to steal some frontline reps as the season goes on. You have Chase Young on one side. Jonathan Cooper is going to start probably at the other side, but they're going to bring Tyreek Smith off the bench early and often, and I think he's going to be a difference maker at defensive end. And, of course, Zach Harrison, the true freshman, he had a great spring as well. Couple sacks, I think, in the spring game, and Dave Biddle, who I work with, coined the name Sack Harrison, I think, for him. I'm giving Dave credit for that. Could have been somebody else, I don't know, but he couldn't stop saying it, so I'm giving him credit. Tony, Dave, when he gets a hold of a phrase, it's hard to get it out of his mouth. So Yeah, at any rate, you got several guys. They didn't just stand pat on defense and say, okay, well, these guys played last year. They've got these jobs won. I mean, you revamp the entire coaching staff. They're going to play the guys who they see practice and perform well every day. And those are going to be the guys who are going to get the lion's share of the work. There's no somebody's just going to play by default. So if somebody's playing on this defense, just assume it's the best 11 for whatever that situation is in a game, because this staff didn't recruit any of these guys other than Larry Johnson, not beholden to any of these guys, and will play the best players.
I'll add in Brendan White as well at the bullet position. That's the Viper at Michigan. That's Jabril Peppers. That's Khaleke Hudson in 2017, where he had 18 and a half tackles for loss and 8 sacks or so. It's a position that can rush the passer on one down, drop back as a deep safety on the next down, and it's an attacking position, one that quarterbacks have to be aware of. Brendan White solidified the defense as much as that defense was solidified last year. Jello, he solidified it as much as you solidified Jello, I guess. But he was good in the back end as that deep safety, and now maybe he solidifies the new style of this defense with that bullet position.
Yeah, at times their resistance was similar to Jello. You're right.
Well, I got to say that the last time I had Jello I was about 8 years old. But if it wasn't made correctly, there was that nasty film on top, that hard layer on top. So maybe that could be a little bit more.
Mark, I can assure you there was plenty of nasty film last year with the Ohio State defense.
That's
every Sunday.
Well done. Tony, if we let Steve see what's on the screen right now, he may get a little bit too big for his britches right there.
See this. Justin Firm is sending us $2. Says he's Steve's #1 fan. Well, thank you, Justin.
Justin may not be aware that he's sending that to me. By the time it goes through the YouTube exchange rate, then I send it to Steve, he may end up with about 17 cents. But we can start to make a collection for you, Steve.
Way of the world. And I have to pay the government 40% of that. So, yeah.
Justin actually has made a contribution to the channel other than that, that I will not make known right here, since I don't know that he wants me to. So I'm going to have that out with Justin, but he's a very certainly loyal viewer and listener to the show that has made his contributions in the past. So we also see here, I don't know if you guys noticed that we had someone donate a countdown clock. So I have set it to the Miami-Florida game, which is the first game of the season on August 24th, 7:30 on that Saturday night. So we've got just about 23 days, 22 hours, 18 minutes, and counting down from there.
Have they already started practice since they're playing a week early? And
they went a week earlier.
Is Tate Martell in the running for this thing at Miami?
Absolutely, he is.
Track of it. Yes.
Apparently, he doesn't throw as crisp a ball as the other two, but of course, he's got that other dynamic working for him beyond the other two, who are definitely agile, mobile kids, but don't have that afterburner like Tate Martell does, nor the bulk to knock some safeties over.
Tate Martell still holds the Ohio State all-time record for completions, 100% completions in the game with an 11 for 11 performance. So, in my experience, he's a tremendous thrower.
Oh, fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the asterisk has to be included because it was against the Rutgers defense, correct?
Hey, that's Big Ten football right there, Mark. You watch your mouth.
Big Ten football, technically speaking. Yes, it is. I'm going to put you guys on the line a little bit on the spot because you guys mentioned going out to practice every day, and I know you don't get to see what you want to see there. But, man, amongst all those writers, now – I should have you guys pull out your iPhones and live stream directly from practice, because I can imagine all you guys getting together and what you guys talk about watching Ohio State football practice. I would be fascinated to hear those conversations if you can give us just a glimpse of what's discussed there.
Well, depending where you're standing, you're going to hear about the Bachelorette. But if you do stream something, you will be kicked out. So we do not do that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. They actually have a room, or they have had a room in the past where we can go in and work, and usually it's pretty light debate in there about current affairs and road trips and whatever else kind of comes up. So yeah, it is what it is.
Sometimes Ohio State does a live feed before the head coach comes out, before like Urban would come out, and they would broadcast what was going on for a few minutes in there. So you had to watch what you were saying at times because that was going out over the air of the Ohio State Buckeyes.com. Not that anything untoward or anything foul would be said amongst a large group of sports writers.
Typically not.
So our guy Dennis Wilson, he commented early. He's a big Miami fan, so that's the disclaimer there. Earlier, that Steve's a little too soft on the Buckeyes. He commented that Steve's a little bit too soft and wanted to know what great accolades Steve was going to pour on the Buckeyes tonight. And then here he is wondering about Justin Fields, and obviously making a little dig at Justin Fields. Inability to gain a 4th and 11 with about 7 Alabama players on his back during that SEC championship game.
Well, I don't know what I've done or said to be soft on them. I don't know. I mean, again, you're in this preseason mode where everybody's undefeated in the preseason. Even Rutgers is undefeated right now, which has been our whipping boy, I guess. But you know, the whole. I think Fields has put everything that happened at Georgia behind him, and I actually was at an event with some friends here the other day, and a buddy of mine had been down to Georgia and saw the Massachusetts game last year, and Fields got to play, as you would think, quite a bit against an outmanned UMass team, and this guy came away with the idea. He told me that Fields is obviously an amazing runner with the ball in his hands, and he's got probably a better arm than JT Barrett. So probably in the middle between Barrett and Haskins, but he thought doesn't have to apologize to anybody for his arm strength. So it could be a dynamic package that Ohio State's going to get to see. But again, until those bullets fly for real, until he's up against what is a primetime defense in an important game, you really don't know how he's going to respond or how they're going to use him. So again, it's kind of buyer beware with Ohio State right now. That certainly everyone thinks and believes they're going to be there at the end of the season, competing with Michigan for the Big Ten championship. But anything, and we mean anything, could happen going forward. And I think that's what, again, makes this season so fascinating in my mind right now, is that it is kind of a breath of fresh air with a new coach, new quarterback, new systems, and we'll see how it all kind of comes together over the next month.
It may be buyer beware, but Mark, don't you think you could get Ohio State at a pretty good price right now?
Yeah, it sure looks like it from the various statistics we've talked about in recent weeks in regards to prognostications. They're not real statistics, talking about number 13 in the FBI, talking about a 8% chance of winning the Big Ten championship and a less than 1% chance of moving on to the college football playoff. I just think that those numbers are crazy. They're crazy ridiculous. It reminds me of the over-under heading into it would have been the 2016 season. After all those NFL players were lost in 2015, they went into the 2016 season. They went to Oklahoma that year. They were only like a 1-point favorite, and I think they were an underdog for most of the week until the line switched. But the line on that season, the over-under, if I'm not mistaken, was 8 tops. I think at times during the offseason it was 7.5. And I was thinking, my goodness, if I could drive a Brinks truck to Vegas right now and take Ohio State to win 8 games, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And that's about where the FPI is. It's in the 8-4 range, 8.5, 3.5 range.
Yeah, and the issue is, I mean, and we've talked about this a number of times. John Cooper had it at this level. Jim Tressel had it at this level. Urban Meyer had it at this level, and now can Ryan Day fickle, whatever. Can Ryan Day maintain this level or right near this level remains to be the question. And Meyer won, I want to say, at least 11 games every year, and was, I think, 12 wins all but 1 year. So yeah, it is very telling when you look at it and say, this is the pedigree that Ryan Day has to live up to. It's 12 wins or bust. And, uh, that is some tall cotton. I don't know. I'm going to be real interested to see how he goes about trying to maintain these incredible standards and really to measure, whenever it comes, whenever the first loss is, whether it's in October, whether it's in January, whenever it may be, when and if it ever happens this season, the level of disappointment for spoiled Ohio State fans who are, can be a little bit boorish when things don't go their way and can say, oh, we should have never elevated this guy. We should have done a national search. Matt Campbell's name will come up the first day Ohio State loses a game, and under Ryan Day, and just kind of be prepared for that backlash. It's going to come. They can lose to a great team, and it's still going to happen because, again, this will be my 25th year covering Ohio State, and as John Cooper once said, they're with us win or tie, and no truer words have ever been spoken. I'll just say that.
And the best example of the second portion of that statement would have been in 1992, when, of course, Gordon Gee was pleased with that tie against Michigan, and some Ohio State fans
Their greatest win.
Might have gained a little solace from that effort just because they had lost so many consecutive games to Michigan going back to 87. We certainly like the viewing choices of one NCIS Fanatic 21. Now, if we could get a few more million in my camp versus the Democratic presidential debate, then we'd really be rolling.
Yeah, it's a rough night to compete against the television viewing audience there, Mark.
Yeah.
We take on all comers, Tony. we don't do that counter programming bit. We just full-fledged, straight ahead, regardless.
Summer reruns on most of the channels and presidential debate. If they had put Selena Meyer in this presidential debate from Veep, that would have been much better, I guess.
Mark, you mentioned counter programming. Have we talked about Fox doing their marquee game at noon? Have we talked about that?
We have not. And wow, Jake. Whoa. Hey now. So I will take care. You guys start the discussion on the noon decision by Fox to highlight the games at noon, the better games, and move them as a counter programming strategy, and I'll take care of the live stream.
Yeah, what I'm interested in seeing is, will they actually do it? Because Steve, we've got the Nebraska game, which we all assume is going to be a night game. Fox, if they get it, they want to make their marquee games at noon to be the big show at that time, which I think is wise. It also leads, they've got their pregame show that they want to lead into that. So it's smart in that way. I'm just not sure that it's actually going to happen, because I assume Nebraska is going to be at night. There's other games at night. I think it's an interesting strategy, and I like it. I prefer noon games because I get home sooner. I'm a little selfish like that. But I don't know. Do you think it works? Do you? It's new. I mean, remember 10 years ago, the move was towards primetime, and we loved it because we didn't get as many primetime games as we would like. You think back to the Stanford win over USC with Jim Harbaugh. I think that was maybe 2007. That was one of the rare night games on ABC, maybe. And then it's become a norm, and now you're kind of going back the other way. What's old is new again, and we'll see if it works.
Yeah, it was around 2005 or 2006 that ABC made that conscious decision that, and obviously they had basically given their sports division over to ESPN, which was all owned by Disney at the time, and basically co-opted that, and ESPN took over ABC Sports. And the decision was made, a few years after that whole transition, that they were going to make Saturday night a college football night. And they had the lion's share of the television rights for most of the conferences. Obviously, the SEC primary game has always been on CBS just about every Saturday. There were some exceptions if they had U.S. Open tennis or whatever back in the day. But by and large, ABC had the pick of the litter from the other conferences and could put a quality primetime game on there. Well, what's happened as we've crept forward 10 or 15 years, the landscape has changed. There's been realignment in college football, and Fox has dived into this thing with both feet, and now they own rights on some Pac-12, some Big 12, and Big 10. I don't think they have anything with ACC or SEC, nothing of note. And so they've got those three conferences, and they can cobble together a pretty nice schedule. They're actually paying the top dollar for the Big 10, and they get the first pick most weeks over ESPN and ABC, which still gets some Big 10 games. But what I think Fox's problem in my studying their coverage of college football is who is picking these games. They have put some of the worst games in prime time. They had a BYU Washington game last year or something. They have Penn State this year, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, but week 2 or 3, I think they're playing a MAC team in prime time. I mean, I'm dumbfounded. I guess they're playing Buffalo. Maybe it's Buffalo that week, or which, Buffalo had a great team last year, whatever. But Fox's selection of games is why they didn't draw worth a crap in prime time. And the other problem that they have is they have to go dark for a couple weeks in October when they have to go World Series, and they have to go probably League Championship Series in prime time on Saturday night. And so whatever momentum you gain from having early season games in prime time, you lose that in October. People, see baseball on there and don't assume that, Fox isn't showing any more night games. So I don't know. I think that they got some, just some growing pains that they're working through. I think Nebraska, Ohio State, provided both teams are undefeated, would draw a huge number in that week. And I think that's what it's all about, is drawing numbers and getting viewers to watch your telecasts. And I think Fox has struggled with that up to this point. Now, obviously, the Ohio State-Michigan game was huge for them. Last year, I don't know if they televised the Maryland game the week before, but the way that game went down to the wire, maybe it was on ESPN. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, there was, at least with ESPN and ABC at times, there was a thing where they wanted to condition Ohio State fans leading into the Michigan game that Ohio State plays at noon, so that you don't miss the Michigan game, or to kind of, condition you that way. So at any rate, I think that Fox is trying like heck to build up its coverage of college football, touting Urban Meyer now on the morning show from 11 to 12. They're going up against what's had a, a 24-year head start with We're Coming to Your City, the game day crew. People watch that show religiously, or listen. You can even listen to it on the radio, on ESPN radio, as you're driving to the game. So Fox is fighting an uphill battle here, and there's no competition on the West Coast in the 9 o'clock hour, or rather the noon hour right now. So it is a good time slot to put a good national game in there. Texas, Oklahoma usually does a pretty good number in that spot on whatever network it's on. And so, I just think that, again, it's all about getting viewership and getting numbers to watch these college football games. Pac-12 was debating about putting together a noon Eastern time schedule. And, the only thing I came back with on that is you've got Utah and you've got Colorado, who are in the Mountain Time Zone, and maybe they could play some 11 a.m. local games like the Big 12 teams sometimes do, play 11 o'clock local time, so they can be on at noon Eastern time. For them, it would be at 1 p.m. Eastern time. But you can't schedule a game anywhere in this country and expect thousands of people to get to it if you play it any earlier than 11 a.m., because it is a struggle getting to and from. They got attendance problems now. Start playing the games at 10 and 11 a.m., and you just see how many people don't show up.
So basically, we get a situation. I'm thinking back, and I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to scores and stats, and also what TV networks handled what games. And so for me, being right, I think Steve and I are right there on the age line, right next to each other. And ABC always had the Ohio State Michigan game noon every year. And then in 1982, it switched to CBS. CBS got into the college football game. Was a big NFL network, of course. Got into the college football game. Brent Musburger, Eric Parsegian, those guys jumped into Big Ten football in 1982. It was that big Gary Williams game, Tim Spencer game, Steve, that you remember in the rain at Ohio Stadium against Michigan in 82. And then CBS had the game for about 5 years. And then the Earl Bruce game at Ann Arbor was when ABC took it back over in 87. Then they had it forever up until the win at Michigan 2 years ago in 17 would have been the first game that Fox had the Ohio State Michigan game. And as I understand, and I may have this slightly off, the way it works is that Fox has kind of overtaken ESPN in regards to their status in the Big Ten contract, and they get that first selection. So that's always going to be Ohio State Michigan. That's why they're going to have the game for the third consecutive year. Then ESPN/ABC takes that second slot, which I believe they must have taken Michigan Penn State last year, because then Fox took Ohio State and Penn State, which turned out to be the second best rated game of the Big Ten schedule. I just saw somebody posted on Twitter just the other day the top 10 rated games in the college football season. Ohio State Michigan game, that was the number one regular season game by far. Wasn't even close at like 13 to 14 million homes. So multiply that by like 2.5 and you get your number of viewers. And the Penn State Ohio State game was in the top 10. And so there was a misstep there because Fox also got that Super Ohio State. No. That was 2 years ago. The game in Columbus was the Fox game, the 39-38 game. Yeah, that was a late night ABC game, the game that the Buckeyes pulled out at Happy Valley. So I don't know what that must have been the number one ABC selection.
Yeah, this year, it seems to me, just looking at the schedule that we've already got of primetime and whatever, that the number 2 pick for, if you presume ESPN, ABC got the second weekend, I think they went Notre Dame, Michigan that first weekend in November, I believe, or maybe the last weekend in October. I don't know. Whenever it is, I think that if you look at the schedule, it's already marked ABC or ESPN. And so to me, that's the one they've earmarked for their, and it makes perfect sense. And it'll be in prime time, I would think. So I think it's up against World Series on Fox. I could be off on my weeks, but yeah, because Ohio State's got a good game that day too. Wisconsin, and you would think maybe that would have been a prime time game, but there's no slot for it if Notre Dame, Michigan is in prime time. Maybe OSU would be 3:30 or noon or whatever. But, I think from a fan standpoint, people like the 3:30 games because you can get there and set your tailgate up. Anytime between 9 and 12, you can drive in comfortably and have no traffic problem at Ohio State pretty much between 9 and 12. After that, it gets a little dicey trying to get there for a 3:30 game. And you can actually enjoy your tailgate and watch the first round of games at your tailgate till about 2:30, then pack up and head in and watch the band and everything and get ready for the game. The noon games are just, there are people who attend these games who live within a 5-mile radius of Ohio State, the students certainly, but most of the people coming to the games are driving in from the suburbs or Cleveland or Cincinnati or Dayton. And for them to get to a noon game is it's a major undertaking because you've got to get out of bed, get your stuff together, and get on the road by 8:30 or 9 o'clock, or you're going to be sitting in traffic, and it's no fun. So, it just – and then when you get there, there's no time to hang around and do a whole lot because by 11:15, you want to be inside the stadium. So,
yeah. I've been plagued with some kind of a sports watching defect or bad gene or something because I tend to enjoy watching marginal sports events. So when everybody else is watching World Cup soccer final, I'm like, well, I was watching the Brewers Pirates game or whatever, or, whatever case, I love the noon Minnesota Purdue games. I love watching that stuff. So I love the noon football games, but obviously I'm not at the event most of the time. That's a rare occasion, like 1 or 2 trips out per year to actually be at the stadium.
invariably the noon games produce some of the best drama because, like Ohio State at Maryland last year, Ohio State showed up and wasn't ready to play, and they were the heavy favorite. Maryland just barreled them, and it took a Herculean effort in the second half for Ohio State to pull that game out. Every week, all season long, there'll be a major upset in the noon window, and you'll say, "God, I didn't see that coming." And it could be anything. It could be, it could be Minnesota versus Maryland, and one figures to be much better than the other, but it just, it just happens, and that's what makes those noon games so much fun. Is that, a lot of times the better team doesn't win, and it creates some drama for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mark. I like the noon games. That's why for Ohio State's 3:30 games, I'll be in the press box at noon so I can watch football. It's like the worst part about this job is you can't watch as much football as you'd like because you're busy watching football. And so you get to the press box and you have a TV there and you watch whatever happens. And usually it's going to be something interesting. And if it's not, you've got other stuff to do. There's free food, there's mingling, there's, iced coffee.
If they don't have the game that you want to watch up on the screen, we're now so sophisticated and we've got high-speed internet. You can watch whatever you want on your computer. And it's been a tradition every year, at about every week if we're playing at 3:30, about 3:25, you've got 10 people huddled around a computer to watch somebody miss a field goal or something, or make a field goal to win a game or something. And everyone's like, "Oh my gosh," going nuts. But that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and you'll have one side of the press box might be a couple seconds ahead on their computer than the other side, so you'll hear the reactions before it gets to your computer.
Oh no!
Yeah.
To your point, Tony, I know 6 years covering the SEC and going to the games every week, then people would ask me, the next day to comment on the Arkansas-Auburn game and the Florida-Tennessee game, and I'd be at the Mississippi State-Alabama game, and I'd explain, I typically wouldn't, but it'd be running through my head. Well, we had a 3:30 game in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. 2:30 Central Time. Well, we had to be at the game like 2 hours early. We had to drive an hour. We had to drive through traffic. We had to load up the gear. We're getting at the station at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. We're traveling. We're at the game. The game's over at 7 o'clock at night. You're going into the locker room for interviews. You're going to the post game. You're not getting out of there until 9 o'clock at night. You're rushing back to the station, editing highlights. You're not sitting there watching football. And it's 11 o'clock at night, and you've tied up 15 hours into one football game, and you're supposed to be an expert on everybody else that's playing.
Yep. And then, after the Ohio State game, we'll go to the post game and get back to the press box around halftime of the next game and get to watch a little bit of that while you're working, and then try to get home for the 8 o'clock games. Or, if you're playing late at night or you're playing in the 8 o'clock game, forget about it. You're there. And not to complain, but Steve will tell you the road games, the night road games are just
no fun.
No fun. Even though they're fun to be at, they're no fun afterwards.
If we wanted to leave Penn State let's say you get your interviews done, you wanted to go back to your hotel to work, you need an Army helicopter to get out of there because there's nowhere to go. The roads are so backed up. Even with the freeway, it still is difficult to get out of there after a game. Like, we'll look out the press box at 1 a.m. and there's still a line of taillights out there. And the game's been over for an hour and a half and people are still stuck in traffic. So
and most people have to stay like an hour away.
Yeah.
Those are the closest available hotels.
Yeah.
Guys, as I understand it, this is just a rumor that a lot of people that watch football actually like to maybe take a few dollars out of their wallet and actually place what's called a wager against somebody else or some type of mechanism. And so we provided an opportunity for people to do that and also donate to a good cause. So a gentleman by the name of Bobby, he has a podcast called Volunteer Roadshow. His 12-year-old son is battling cancer. There's been a fund put together by St. Jude's Hospital in correlation and connection, I should say, with betnow.eu. I've been asked with some other YouTubers to help support this. So basically what we've got, folks, for those of you who like to bet on football games, is we've got a link below in the description section. And it says Sam Strong. The hashtag is Sam Strong. Use that link. You go on betnow.eu. You set up an account, and anything that you donate to the account to do your wagering, there's 50% added to your account balance. So for example, you throw in $100, but now we'll add $50 to it to do your wagering. And if you use the promo code MRTVCFB, you get the 50% additional to the account. And I'm going to find out from Bobby if there's a way that non-bettors can actually just donate directly to the cause. So
That's awesome. Yeah.
Good stuff there. And Bobby says that his son's doing much better these days. So that's fabulous news, because that goes, well, without saying, way beyond the football field in importance. So let's all take notice of that every so often, and check those things in life with our family and friends and other things that mean so much more than the game we enjoy watching on the field. All right. And it's always open to comments and questions here on the live stream with these two gentlemen on the line and the great work that they do. Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone, Steve Hellwagon from 247 Sports Bucknuts. Was there anything else that we wanted to hit before we bid adieu?
You know, Mark, I saw somebody mention that Justin Fields was going to have 4,000 yards of total offense. And that's kind of been around what I've been, I might go a little under that, because of I'm thinking maybe like 3,000 yards passing and 500 or 600 yards rushing, but I could definitely see like 3,307 or 3,406. I would not be surprised at all if he gets there. I think Ryan Day's offense, Mike Yurcich's offense, Kevin Wilson's offense is set up for something like that, to have a guy with his abilities put up some prolific numbers. And I would not be surprised at all. And the potential is there. Let's just say that. And
hopefully for Ohio State fans, it's not a lot of 550-yard efforts against the FAUs of the world, and then some lesser of, the perfect formula is maybe like 240 passing, 60 or 70 rushing against the better teams on the schedule. A very controlled, nice effort in a 35-point effort by the Ohio State offense against a quality defense.
Dwayne Haskins, I think, spoiled you. Steve mentioned Ohio State fans being spoiled at times, and Dwayne Haskins definitely did that. But what I'm interested to see, before Dwayne Haskins, Ohio State quarterbacks Braxton Miller, JT Barrett would fade in November, because they didn't necessarily have the arm to get through the Big Ten weather in November. Dwayne Haskins obviously did, and we saw the results, and it didn't seem to affect him any. Justin Fields has that same kind of arm strength, accuracy. We haven't seen that yet, but it'll be interesting to see if he can maintain September to October to November like Dwayne Haskins did. And JT Barrett and Braxton Miller could not, at least throwing the ball. Justin Fields has the arm strength. I think KJ Hill said this spring that he's got a stronger arm than Dwayne Haskins. So weather should not impact him as much as it did the other guys, which will also allow him to maintain that pace. Braxton Miller had a pace. JT Barrett had pace. Where in October, it looked like they were going to put up some huge numbers. And then comes November, like middle of November, and they're throwing for 120 yards on 6 of 19 passing. Dwayne Haskins never had that. Justin Fields, I don't think he's going to falter in that same way. So that would allow that same pace, that early pace, to continue later into the season.
That's a good point, because I'm old enough to remember Drew Brees, and we know he's still an outstanding NFL quarterback nearly 2 decades into his career. And when he was at Purdue, they went up to Michigan State in early November, and we experienced some terrible Michigan State weather up there about 3 years ago. It was just miserably awful. I think it was 16. It was miserably awful up there, blowing rain and snow, basically. And Michigan State did not have a very good team back in whatever year that was, 2000, 2001. And Purdue got upset. They were clearly on their way, to winning the Big Ten championship. But Michigan State, which did not have a very good team, I think it was right after Saban had left, and Bobby Williams may have been the coach there at the time, and they were just kind of going through a little bit of a transition. But they pulled off the upset basically on the back of the weather conditions, because you couldn't throw it all over the lot that day like Purdue and Drew Brees like to do.
I think that was a reason why maybe some people didn't buy into Joe Tiller at first, where they thought, this offense can't work in the Big Ten. You can't be a pass happy offense because weather changes. But he showed pretty early that it was possible. It's just when you met up against better talent, things weren't as easy. But even Billy Dicken was throwing the ball around before Drew Brees, and it helped move. I think Urban Meyer carried the Big Ten forward. Joe Tiller got that momentum started and brought the passing game back. There had been some passing games like Illinois in the early 80s and things of that nature, but Joe Tiller brought the Big Ten a little bit forward as well. You think when they had like Jim Coletto as their head coach from Ohio State, and it was just, caveman football, and Joe Tiller, I mean, one of the Big Ten greats.
Eric Hunter, quarterback.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I like back then what Tiller did, what Drew Brees did. It's crazy that he's still playing.
It is. Not only is he playing, he's
level.
I think
or even better.
NFL Network's list of the top 10 players currently in the league. They're unveiling that like day by day, going 10 men down. And I don't think he's been mentioned, and they're down to the top 10. So my buddy of mine made that remark last night. He thinks Brees is going to be mentioned in that top 10 along with the Tom Brady, who's also played about the like number of years and so on and so forth. But yeah, that it is very amazing. It's amazing to me that those two guys in particular have lasted this long and played at that high a level in that league for this long.
That's the Big Ten, baby.
Well, one of the more incredible stats, Tony, is you go back to these Illinois teams in the 1980s under Mike White, and they had a run of really good quarterbacks that ended with Jeff George. But earlier than that, and White was gone by that time, but Jack Trudeau and Tony Eason. But I think it was David Wilson, who threw for, what was it, 721 or 621 against Ohio State in a game in 81. I think it's still the Big Ten record for passing yardage.
In a loss, right?
Yes, it was like 49-42. The Buckeyes still won the game.
Art Schleister was on the other side for OSU. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, Schleicher had his best passing game statistically against Bobby Bowden and Florida State in a loss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Haskins just broke the record last year. I think he threw for 458, and what Haskins had, whatever he had against, I think it was the Purdue game, ironically.
Yeah, definitely. I think he was over 500 that day.
Yeah, throwing the ball like 73 times. I remember Drew Brees throwing it 83 one game against Wisconsin. Crazy.
It's just crazy. Yeah.
Yes. Remarkable players. Drew Brees. Yeah, what he has done in the NFL just is amazing. I think he topped like 75-76% completion percentage last year.
He's got to be the happiest man in America to know that Michael Thomas agreed to a $100 million contract, and he'll be catching balls, for the rest of Drew Brees' career, basically, with the New Orleans Saints, whether it's 1, 2, 3 years, however many years it may be. And this is interesting. Ohio State sent out a list of 62 guys who were in preseason camps from Ohio State. The Bengals cut Chris Worley, so now I guess it'd be down to 61. And Jalen Marshall would actually be on a team right now. He played really well in that league, or American, whatever it was, the AAF in the spring before it went defunct. He was a very pleasant surprise, but then I guess he failed a drug test. He had agreed to a contract with the Oakland Raiders, and then as soon as he, I guess, got the drug test positive back, they released him. But, there's probably going to be, I can't imagine that many guys will stick, but there will probably be high 40s of Ohio State guys in the NFL, maybe the most ever. And when you look at the money that they have signed for collectively, with $100 million by Michael Thomas leading the way, whatever Ezekiel Elliott and Dallas are eventually going to agree to, probably, won't be in that neighborhood because they don't pay running backs quite that much. But, it could be, as John Calipari joked one day about how he had gotten his guys, quote, billions of dollars worth of pro contracts in the NBA. Ohio State football won't be, you got $100 million in one guy. It's not going to be too hard to add it up and get to $1 billion perhaps of salaries for Ohio State guys in the NFL. Just absolutely mind-boggling.
And just one more quick note on Michael Thomas. Remember, he had 3 total catches heading into his 3rd year at Ohio State.
Unreal.
And now he's surpassing Jerry Rice each year that he plays, whether that's the first 2 years, the first 3 years in the league in regards to yardage and receptions.
It just goes to show you it's harder to do that at Ohio State than it is in the NFL.
It's almost kind of like the concept that who was the most qualified or who was the only man in America who could hold Michael Jordan under 20 points.
Smith.
It was Dean Smith.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Dean Smith.
All right, guys, man, it's been a whole lot of fun talking Ohio State football, Big Ten football, past and present. We'll have to start, of course, grinding the game film on that FAU squad here very soon. And I'm sure you guys will enjoy that.
And I guess, is it true that Francois is not going to play at Florida Atlantic now? I mean,
I didn't hear that.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I bet it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it probably won't matter who the quarterback is. So,
all right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for Ohio State Buckeyes Live. We got Steve Hellwagon on the line with Bucknuts, of course, and Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone doing just excellent work covering Ohio State football, and it's shown right here. So you got to join them on their sites as well. Gentlemen, hopefully we can do it again next week. Fortunately for me, I'm taking a little vacay starting at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning, taking a flight out, but I will be back for next Wednesday night. I'm doing that the next 2 weeks. Very long weekends, but I'll be right back here on Wednesday.
awesome. Well, enjoy your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right,
I
guys.
guess we can't skip now that you're coming back for it.
That
That's right. All right, everyone. We will see everyone later. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, can I grab